is such a powerful way of bringing people together. When I graduated high school, I had over 100 scholarship offers, and my goal was to get an education and play professional basketball. And I said, I'll never go back to that farm. We're able to move from less than 1% of local food production to 10%. That was $1 billion change. We're growing energy here. We're growing soil, we're growing people, and we're growing a community because we're anchored here in a community that badly needs food. So part of that, this whole concept is really about growing community as well as providing the most important thing to all of us, which is our food. My mother's family was in farming. My father was a sharecropper, but unlike many African-American males at that time, he wanted myself and my brothers to know where our food came from, and for practical reasons, to be able to grow our own food. As we sit here today, we're losing rural farmland and we're losing farmers. 1 million since 1960. Actually, I was driving down the street here at the time, back in 1993. I was working for Procter Gamble in sales and sales technology, and I just saw the for sale sign, and I stopped and I wrote down the number. You know, I said to myself, this is the place that I could land, and that's when I got in trouble. I knew a little bit about the area. 5 blocks away is the largest housing project we have here in Milwaukee called West Lawn. Was pretty much what is called a food desert, and the only access to food is corner stores and what they call fast food swamps. As a matter of fact, many of our kids are eating food that our grandmothers wouldn't recognize as food. I was just in Cleveland. I met with the mayor of Cleveland, and he really gets it. We're starting to get a lot of waste from food wholesalers. They throw away thousands and thousands of pounds of food waste a week. I want the same food to go to all people in all communities, and to do that, you have to figure out ways of reducing the production costs, and part of that is what we do here in terms of growing soil by using renewable energy to keep the cost in line so we can get that food to everybody at a reasonable cost. People come here, they want to know, how did you do that here? You know, how did you make that happen on these 3 acres? How can we do that? This farm system is a unique farm system. It's part of, I think, ag of the future in terms of how we grow food here very intensively, using every square foot, and everything that we discover, we pass on to folks that come here. It's not like we want to stick it in some closet and try to make money off of it. Everything we discover, we pass on to other folks.
I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone who was officially named a genius by a major foundation. How did you find out that you were getting the MacArthur Genius Award?
In our city, we have a lot of vacant land. In the Midwest, there's hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of acres inside cities. Cities like Detroit, cities like Youngstown, Ohio, and Buffalo, New York, Chicago, where they have 77,000 vacant lots, some 33 square miles of vacant land, that we can grow food. I always believed in having a diverse group of folks to work with, so diversity is at the top of my agenda. One of the declarations I made with the city was that I would hire kids from the community. Then we started being looked at as an asset to the community because we were providing jobs.
I live 10 blocks up from here, and I used to walk past here every day when I was in high school to go to the basketball court. And one day I just stopped in. Love it here. I would have never thought that I would be doing something like this. I love it.
Whoever wants help, whether they're from Detroit or some small rural community in Alabama or Mississippi or upstate in Wisconsin, we engage those communities. So it's not just inner city, it's not just urban, it's rural communities that are hurting today as well. But it's really all about food and how we are going to try to change the existing food system to make it something that really works for everybody. People think because they spend a lot of money for food, that food is fresh and good. But we know when food travels many miles, it loses a lot of its nutrient value, and the system that we need is to go back to those days where our food system was local. A sustainable food system is the only way to really end hunger in the world. The industrial food system, it hasn't worked. We have to change our food policy, our national food policy. And to do that, we need concrete projects like this and others around the country to change policy. We just can't compete with going to DC and standing in line and trying to lobby for something. We have to prove that this works. We have to prove that this cash flows. It's something that we need to continue to grow. There are some challenges that we have to overcome to make it grow. Being a former athlete, you know, I like competition and I like challenges. I've always wanted to guard the best player, take the last shot in the game or whatever. You know, I like that kind of challenge. And if you can transfer that over into something like this, it becomes a very powerful and good thing for the community. Thank you very much. It's great to be back here on campus, and you know, this building wasn't here in 1967, but I can guarantee you I walked on this spot, because I probably walked on most of the spots on this campus back in 1967 through 1971. It's great to be back here. I know I have some friends out there in the crowd, and I apologize because this was scheduled a long time ago, long before we figured that the U would be in the Sweet 16. So I apologize to you guys. The game is going on as we speak, as we're here in this room, but go Canes is all I can say. And believe me, we have to win this game. This is like, you know, a must for me. I'm being a little selfish right now. This is a must for me because I've got to go back to Milwaukee. And all these crazy Marquette fans that, by the way, these fans don't know anything about basketball, by the way. I got to face those folks if we don't win. So putting a little pressure on the team. And I was fortunate when I was inducted into the ACC Legends in Charlotte, North Carolina, to meet these young people that are playing tonight when they were freshmen, when Coach Haight was here. So I feel really good that they're going to win tonight. So, you know, that's a good thing. But it's really great to be here for so many reasons. To see some old friends, but to really talk about what I believe is the most important thing in our lives, and it's our food. And it's something that everybody in this room, regardless of where you come from, what religion you are, what color you are, it's something that we all have in common, is the fact that we have to eat food to survive. And it's always been my thing, having grown up on a farm, and when I was growing up, we grew 90% at least of the food that we ate. So I was fortunate to be able to eat really good food. And you can see what happens when you eat really good food, you know. But it's really important today, especially. I'm not going to frame this in all the negative things that everybody probably already know about the food system, but I will say a few things that will hopefully bring into context of what you're going to see in a minute in my PowerPoint. But we know that, unfortunately, tonight in this country, a country with so much, 3 out of 10 young people go to bed without a meal. We know that the food we are eating is not all good food. As a matter of fact, only about 2% of the food that we consume is organic in this country. We know that our population is going to grow to, over the next 40 years, to about 3.1 billion more people on this earth. And right now, we can't feed the people on the planet today. As humans, we've only been on this planet a short time, and the devastation that we've done to the planet in terms of carbon. Our carbon footprint is very high, and we know what is happening in terms of climate change. Of course, some people argue that there's no such thing, but we know it is, most of us anyway. So we have to do something about this, because a lot of people predict that we won't survive as a human race if we don't change the way we operate. And food is such an important thing, and food can be that leader of this change. Because over 25% of fossil fuel is used to grow fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, for the travel of food from far away into our communities. So we have to fix that. And one of the ways of fixing it is to grow, the best case scenario is to grow food in your backyard, a percentage of your food in your backyard, whether it's 5%, 10%, or whatever. If we could get enough people doing that, it would change our carbon footprint by a lot. So we have these issues all over the globe, not just in Miami and Milwaukee and Chicago and Detroit, where there's now 90 square miles of vacant land out of the 169 square miles of territory in Detroit, where there are no retail grocery stores, and people have to go outside of their community to get their food. So, you know, I have a lot of hope, even though those things I just said sound pretty depressing and dismal. I have a lot of hope, and the hope I have is sitting in this room. The hope I have as I go around the country and do these talks are usually sitting in the room today, because 10 years ago, there wouldn't be but about 50 people in this room. But today, people are coming out. And the people that are coming out are under 40 years of age. So that gives me great hope that young people really care about the environment. They care about food and social and environmental justice. They want to go back into their communities and work, and they're really a part of this, what I call the good food revolution. They want to grow inside cities. They want to start small farms. They want to work in schools and go back and teach. As we train at Growing Power, we train a lot of teachers to do hands-on education. So that's the good news. So even though there's a lot of bad news, there's really the good news that this will change. This next generation will make that change, I believe. So I could stand up here tonight and keep you guys and talk about this all night, but I really want to show you the history of our work and what is possible in communities. What is possible to scale up? You know, because when I started with pretty much myself and a few kids from the community on our farm. We're in our we just finished our, as of March 1st, our 20th year. We're in our 21st year now of doing urban agriculture. I'm a rural agriculture person that came into the city. I had a 100-acre farm, and in '93 I bought the last remaining farm in the city of Milwaukee, and for selfish reasons, to sell my farm produce. And I got sucked into, to make a long story short, I got sucked into this work by the kids as I helped a youth group. So that's why I'm standing before you today talking about this. So what I'd like to do now is take you through, probably need somebody to, yeah, you know, you can tell I came from that era where technology was, yeah, I know a lot of you are in that same, came from that same era. I never, from the beginning. Okay. So I'm going to go through this. How many of you have ever seen a slide presentation with over 1,000 slides? Probably none of you. Well, you're about to see a slide presentation with over 1,000 slides. Now, I promise you it won't take 40 days and 40 nights. Here goes. In 1993, this is our early years, and this is what the facility looked like back in those days. And these young people right here were the first young people I worked with from the community, because it's important to engage the community, and I was able to engage the community so that they were on board with these kids working at Growing Power and participating in youth projects and learning how to farm. And there's something different about these young people than the young people today. And what makes them different, I'll tell you. Some of you probably already guessed, but they have their pants pulled up. So we started composting because you see inside cities and even in our suburban areas and rural areas, our soil is contaminated with things like arsenic and lead, and you can't grow in the soil. So we have no digging equipment. We have no digging. We don't have any plows or rototillers or anything. Anybody who's got a plow or rototiller, you're going to farm in the city, get rid of them. Okay, because all you're doing is bringing up weed seed and contaminants. So you can see one of the old A-frame greenhouses that were built in the late 1920s. We had an old chicken tractor back there, and then we started growing more soil, because for us to farm, we have to grow soil. And this past year, we grew soil out of 40 million pounds of carbon and nitrogen waste that we collected. We also started a heifer project with about 30 pounds of worms, and the kids used to come in and they used to tend to the worms, you know, because our worms are our livestock, so they had to take care of those worms. And this is the aquaponics system. Now, we do aquaponics on a pretty large scale now. But it started with these 3-barrel configurations. One was the weed tank, one was the fish tank, and one was the filter tank. And you put a air stone down one of the tubes, and it made water circulate from tank to tank, replicating a clean river or stream, and you could grow about 50 tilapia in about 6 months. Remember that image, because you're going to see how I was able to engineer that into the systems that we have today. So we had a number of those along the north wall of greenhouse number 4. We also grew a lot of bedding plants, and the kids would use those bedding plants to decorate around the city in their summer jobs, and I would teach them in the back 40 that you'll see the transformation take place. And these kids, I would teach them how to plant. And one of the things I noticed that many of these young people had really poor reading and writing skills. So we would have them go out and do something physical, hands-on. We'd bring them inside and have them write about it, and then we'd give them reading about microorganisms in the worm bins and so forth, and their grades improved. So that's something that many of the schools use today, this hands-on kind of piece. Thank you. And then the lost art of preserving food, something that my family did back in the day, and I'm sure a lot of folks in this room, families have done. And how to use tools. There's probably adults in this room that don't know how to properly use hand tools. And then more and more people started hearing about the work I was doing and started coming around. I also work with the juvenile justice system with some kids that had gone out and been in youth prisons for quite a few years, and they were coming back, and we had this a program to kind of bring them back into society, even though they were still on ankle braces and so forth. But they were able to come back to their home, and we were transitioning them through a healthy activity of growing food. They had taken so much from society, and now they were growing this food. I'd bring over compost and teach them how to grow food, and they would give it back to the community through Second Harvest, now Feeding America. And we'd take social service organizations like this, where they had shrubs blocking the view to their cars, and there were car thefts happening almost daily. We removed the shrubs with a group of kids, and we brought in compost, and we started growing flowers. And kind of a magical thing happened, because just that act of growing flowers ended the car thefts, because the car thieves felt uncomfortable because people were starting to turn their heads and look at the flowers, and they thought they were looking at them. So that became a way of remediating that problem. And it also softened those communities because those communities needed something that would beautify those communities and become more aesthetically pleasing communities. We would take vacant lots. This was on 25th and Brown, where folks where young people would hang out and be drug dealing. People would go by and just keep going, never looked at the kids. They just thought they were hanging out. So we'd bring in about 75 yards of compost, engage the community, and one day we'd turn it into what I call these flower explosions, where we'd plant these flowers and our youth would take care of them at a time when jobs, city jobs for youth in the summer had gone away. So these kids were creating their own jobs, and we would pay them to do this. And then native communities, Pine Ridge Reservation in particular, started coming, and many of these folks, the elders, were not farmers. So we started with the youth that would come to Growing Power, and we'd work with them and they'd go back. And in Inglewood, a neighborhood in south of Chicago where there was a murder a day, we'd go down there and build hoop houses and work with the kids. And in 1995, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel wrote a front page story about the work I was doing with the kids, and it kind of launched us into the turn of the century, and Growing Power really started taking off. So today, when you think of Growing Power compared to the old days, we have 140 employees, we have 23 farms, 25 acres of greenhouses, over close to 500 acres of outside production to be able to get food in a very integrated distribution system to everybody in our community, whether it's wholesale or retail, restaurants, CSA type program that we've had since '95. So this is what Growing Power looks like today. Quite a change. Now this is the largest housing project in Milwaukee, 5 blocks away. The closest grocery store to our facility and this facility is over 3.5 miles away. The USDA determines that you're in a food desert if you don't have a grocery store within a mile of your house. So this is definitely a food desert. And it's being reconstructed, and we are in a partnership with the Housing Authority. We operate the community garden. We also have a waste pickup system, a pilot project for the city of Milwaukee that'll start here and hopefully spread throughout the city of Milwaukee, where we pick up the food waste from each one of those dwellings in this mixed income community that's being developed there now. Growing Power, we use a lot of renewable energy. So this is different than what it looked like, and we call this a community food center. A community food center is a place where people can come and get information about food. They can gather, they can get training, and they can purchase food through our retail store. We're also a multicultural, multi-generational organization. I come from an area, I was fortunate to grow up right outside of Washington, D.C. on the border of Bethesda and Rockville, and very multicultural area, and there's a lot of strength in multiculturalism, and I see the university has been a very multicultural, international type university, so I'm kind of proud to have been a part of the growth of that piece. So these are some of the faces of folks that come to Growing Power for trainings and visits. Over 20,000 visitors last year. That doesn't even count our retail sales that come through our front door. I'm going to go through this pretty fast. I think you all thought I was kidding when I said I had 1,000. You have to get to know me. Even these guys come. Everybody's welcome. Workshops. This type of farming that we're doing, you have to develop some skills. We're talking about growing at $5 to $50 a square foot. At $5 a square foot, in an acre, you're talking about $200,000 an acre. We grow things like sprouts that turn over every week at $50 a square foot in the annual year, and the income on an acre is over $1 million. So this is a different kind of farming. It's not maybe our grandfather's type of farming. We're going to have to produce more food. As we sit here tonight, we're losing farmland. We're losing rural farmers. So we're going to have to figure out, and part of that process is getting trained as quickly as we can, but as thoroughly as we can. So these folks come, and one of the pieces is to vision what their project is going to look like. We take them through this visionary process of kind of drawing where things are going to be on their farm or their food system project. Mushrooms, a medicinal crop that is very good for us because we have a lot of sick people. So we train people how to grow mushrooms. And now we're at a state, now we're selling our mushrooms to Cisco, one of the largest wholesalers in the world. And we're able to get this same product to everybody in our community through our diverse marketing scheme that we have. Composting, the thing that I teach, how to grow soil. That's where it's at. If we can't grow soil, we can't grow crops. And the things that we eat have to be the maximum nutritional value. That's where it's at. So to quantify a lot of that stuff, one of the projects I'm working on now is with both of our medical schools in the state and the UW-Milwaukee School of Public Health, and folks that I asked to join me in quantifying all the 150 different crops that we grow and compare it with what's shipped into our community. So this is something we teach folks how to do in this one pallet configuration. You can grow a yard of compost. So we have to get somebody up there with good legs and kind of make sure we're maximizing that. I can't do that anymore. And of course, people are fascinated by the worms because the worms are the key. In a really good agricultural setting or in your backyard, if you don't have 30 worms in every square foot of soil, you don't have good fertility, and most people will never get to that point, or they may get to that point, but they don't have it now. So this is just one way of doing composting on the smallest scale to get the temperatures to 150 degrees. It's all about locally grown food. That's what it's about. And we celebrate food. If you come to Growing Power, and some of the folks that have been to Growing Power in this room can attest to that we feed people throughout the whole weekend of training. They don't have to go out and look for restaurants. Every meal is served, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and that's what it's all about. So let's talk about this composting stuff for a minute, because many people have challenges doing this. But this guy doesn't have challenges. You guys have seen him run through the community picking up your waste, right? I hope nobody works for this company. I'm getting ready to talk about them. They want you to think that they think green. They also say they have over 17,000 acres, this is on their trucks, 17,000 acres of wildlife habitat. Could be true. But I've been up there to those landfills, and the only thing I've seen is seagulls and really big rats, so I don't know what they're talking about. And of course, these trucks are run on electricity, right? Well, that's what somebody told me. It's really about diverting this waste from the landfill and putting it back into Mother Earth. And the way we do that is we engage these companies that have waste, like coffee roasters, who we get over 1,000 pounds of coffee waste. Breweries, we're in a city where there are a lot of microbreweries. We get 80,000 pounds of brewery waste a week and put it into our recipe. And of course, we're in a state with 68% forest. Trees are always coming down. Municipalities are chipping every day. So we get wood chip, almost an unlimited amount of wood chip on the carbon side. And then some of my rural farmer friends, they have moldy hay because we're a dairy state. And then fruits and vegetables, sometimes they never get out of those boxes. They come in on frozen loads, or wholesalers overorder, so we collect that waste. And the food waste that comes in, and that's what it looks like. And then we put that into piles. This is, we do about 1 million pounds right in, at our national headquarters each year. So we grow this soil 200 feet away from where people live. And people always ask me, how can you do that? Don't people complain? Well, the reason they don't complain is because we've engaged the community. We worked with their kids over the years. We do it in a way that we don't have adverse smells. So that's how we're able to do it. But we have other sites, larger sites. Again, we did 40 million pounds of this waste into compost this past year. So we grow a lot of soil. And then we have these rural sites at our Merton farm in Merton, Wisconsin. All of our farms are within a half hour of our national headquarters in Milwaukee. We don't want to go further out than that. And then we have this wonderful finished compost. This is what we grow in. We wouldn't be able to farm without it. And then we have depositories. And remember I said we have worms. Well, we started out with 30 pounds of worms back 16 years ago. Now we have, on this farm alone, we have 7,000 pounds of worms that break down that compost into worm casting, because you see you have to have fertilizer to replace. As you're watering plants, you're leaching out the fertility, and you have to replace that. We cover all of our seed with worm castings because we produce about 100,000 pounds every 4 months. So this is one of our worm depositories. And they said this couldn't be done. So you should never listen to people that say, oh, you can't do this. Many worm people said you can't do it in your climate outside. Well, worms don't know the difference whether they're indoors or outdoors, as long as their temperature is between 70 and 90 degrees, the internal temperature in these systems. We also have systems inside hoop houses. And we just built this system, 400 yards of compost. We inject worms into the compost on the exterior, and they'll work their way in, and they'll break all of that down, and we'll have 40,000 pounds of worm castings in a year. Because that's what we need to grow the food and scale up to changing the dynamics. Because our goal is go in Milwaukee from less than 1% of local food to 10%, which will have huge financial implications in terms of our health improving, job creation, economic development, keeping that money in the local community. So, when I said I have 140 employees, I really have a lot more. I have like 140 billion employees. And those are the worms. And what I like about the worms is that they don't talk back. You know, they go about doing their work. All you have to do is feed them, and they just go and do their thing, you know. And so we have to protect them. I don't call them just worms. They're livestock. They're our urban livestock. Aren't they cool? And that's a cocoon. Over 20 worms comes out of that cocoon in our systems because we've been doing it for a long time. And you'll find this. And this is a great transformative moment for kids. Not just put one worm in a child's hand, but a couple hundred worms, and they'll first jump back when you do it. And then after that, they're just all over it, you know. And it really changes how they look at nature and how they look at food and everything, because then they start asking questions about what are these worms for, and you know, how can I get some worms? And even the adults. Look at this guy. He's really in it as he peers over a worm bin. And this lady found something in the worm bin that she found interesting. But it's really important. The worms are arguably worm castings, the best organic fertilizer in the world. And we get the worms out of the system in a way. After 4 months, we put window screen on top, and we put fresh compost on top of the window screen, and the worms crawl through, and that's how we remove them. And that's the safest way to remove the worms from the systems. Now, if you all are going to get into this business, I'll tell you what you got to do tonight. If this interests you, go home tonight and cut off your window screens, and you have part of your equipment that you need. And then we sell our worm castings for $2 a pound to critical growers and farmers, and $4 a pound retail. If you buy over 20 pounds, you can get it for $2 a pound. And according to a lot of studies, there's a New Zealand study that shows that you get 50% more production using worm castings. And the only reason that these farmers in New Zealand didn't use it is because they didn't want to go through the labor of producing worm castings. But if you want to get 50% flowering, 50% production, increase in production, use worm castings. So 8 months ago, those castings were carbon and nitrogen that we collected. Now they're the highest quality fertilizer in the world. And then we turn it, you can turn it into a tea. Every 5 pounds of this will produce 25 gallons of liquid fertilizer. It's more effective than Miracle-Gro. Of course, nobody in this crowd I know uses Miracle-Gro, so, you know, I don't have to worry. So the other thing that we do with our compost, because when I go into a city, if I drive around Miami, what I look for is vacant lots. They could be in an old closed building, an old factory, and this is what we do. We take our compost and we put it on top of asphalt, 24 inches, 36-inch wide beds, 18-inch pathways, our signature growing style. Now we can construct these high tunnels or hoop houses or greenhouses or whatever you want to call them. We do 2 a day. But we have to put 100 yards of compost in each house. And the reason for that is you have to have enough depth for plants to grow. And then in between the hoop houses, we also build beds for exterior production. Remember that 3-barrel configuration? I was able to engineer that into this. This is a 10,000-gallon system in the greenhouse. We dug out down 6 feet down, built the structure. It now holds 10,000 gallons of water. It can raise 10,000 tilapia or 10,000 yellow perch that are mercury contaminated in Lake Michigan, because you see, you can't commercially fish anymore for Wisconsin's favorite fish, these lake perch. So this house on the right is 10,000 tilapia. We heat that water, and that's also, you get a double benefit. We've been able to decrease our use of carbon by 50% by heating the water. Heating a mass of water that's 20,000 gallons keeps that greenhouse warm. Nothing freezes. It could get minus 20 degrees and nothing inside will freeze. Much more effective than forced air heat. So we have these in all the houses. We're raising over 100,000 fish in an annual year. Here's our staff putting in some of the 10,000 lake perch. Their one pump, by the way, operates this entire system. Just one pump to lift the water. Gravity takes it to the other end through the plants that remediate the nitrogen out so the fish survive. Now these are tilapia. That's what they look like. Some baby ones, a large tilapia after about 6 months. Those are lake perch, Wisconsinites and many Midwesterners' favorite fish. They have no mercury. We get the flesh tested at University of Wisconsin-Madison. This is a black pacu. It comes from Amazon. We're doing some research on this fish. It gets up to 50 or 60 pounds. This one's about 20 pounds, the size that most chefs like. It's a vegetarian. It only eats nuts, berries, other vegetables that fall into the Amazon. The meat is delicious. It has a lot of omega-3 in the meat, just like Norwegian cod and sardines and fish like that. This fish has teeth like humans. It's also related to piranha, but they're not carnivores. So they won't, if you fall into the Amazon, these fish aren't going to attack you and start eating you up, because they don't want your meat. And now if you have some vegetables in your hand, you know, and try to stick it in their mouth, you might. And of course, we grow some koi as well. Now, our relationship, this relationship that Growing Power we have with the Great Lakes Institute at UW-Milwaukee, the foremost people in the country is a very special relationship because it speaks to how university and community-based organizations can work together. This is a very good example of what can happen. Now we're doing a 2-year research project at Growing Power. So it's the university folks that are experts come over and they work with us and help us set up a system. But one of the things that I'm learning how to do, because we have to grow enough fingerlings, the biggest roadblock in aquaculture, because right now 50% of our fish that we eat are farm raised. That's going to 75% they predict in the next 5 years because of what we've done to our oceans, rivers, streams. So this is how we're going to have to do it. These are fingerlings. This is the lab at UW-Milwaukee. And those are egg strands that hatch out in about 2 weeks. So this is what we're going to have to do. This is Dr. Binkowski, who I'm working with on this project. And what you're about to see is not going to hurt the fish. He's going to squeeze the eggs out of this fish. That egg strand is about 1 yard long and houses some 80 to 90,000 fish, potential fish. So, this egg strand, now he's going to straighten it out. And then, forgot to turn off my phone. It must be the team calling me to let me know we're up. So he reaches into the tank and he pulls out a male fish. Now you got to know the difference between a male and a female fish to do this. So that's a piece you have to learn. Okay, next step. He goes to the kitchen and grabs a stainless bowl out of the kitchen. And then he hand mixes the sperm and the eggs together, and now they're fertilized. That's how it happens. So he's teaching me how to do that at the university. And it's really cool, let me tell you. At this point, because we've taken the fish from a very low temperature and the fish are swimming very slow, so all you have to do is reach back and grab a fish. But again, you got to know the difference between a male and a female to do this. The males are just smaller. It's easy to figure it out. This is very important because this is something that we can do in our cities to grow protein for folks in our cities. This is something we can take old buildings and restore those old buildings and build these fish systems in our cities or anywhere in our rural communities and small towns where agriculture. So this 1,000-gallon tank, each egg strand will produce I'll give off about 80 to 90,000 baby fish. About 30,000 will survive. Now in the wild, less than 3,000 will survive. So this is the way to do it. And the other thing is that because we can manipulate the temperature of the water, they have a patent that they're going to pass on to us to do this for 4-season breeding. Because see, these fish only breed once a year in nature, in ponds and in the lake. So we built this research. We've taken one of these old greenhouses that were built back in the late 1920s, and now we have this research facility. We'll be testing 5 different systems. Those are the chillers. One system is heated by compost. We run PEX tubing around the tank and run it outside through compost, and it keeps the water at 70 degrees. That's what grows out the fish. The other 3 are done with our solar hot water system. The other thing that we're doing is growing food, because there's no good food for these fish. There's commercial feed, but it's not really that great. So these black soldier fly larvae are 42% protein, so we have a greenhouse where we're learning how to grow these larvae that you find in waste systems all over the country. But we're able to grow them inside a controlled environment. And as a matter of fact, in this barrel, there's 200,000 of them. That's what the adult fly looks like. It only lives about 8 to 12 days. Goes from a larval state into an adult state to give off eggs back into the waste. And that's how we're able to grow those larvae. So you remember the back 40. Now we have all of these houses that are heated by compost. Compost is actually a renewable energy source if you know how to use it right. So we bank over 1,000 yards of compost around the exterior walls of these hoop houses to keep those hoop houses warm in the wintertime. And inside the four corners, we put piles of compost that give off 150-degree temperature, so we use no fossil fuel. And we're able to grow about 40 different crops throughout the winter, very intensively at $5 a square foot, which again equates to about $200,000 an acre. Very intensive production. That's where it's at. You have to use every square foot that you have. That's my grandson. I think he wants to be a farmer. And that's my photographer's son having a Zen moment, I think, trying to figure out how he fits in the food system. But one of the crops that we grow a lot of that we've been able to get into the public schools with kale chips and kale salad, kale is in one of the top 5 most nutritious crops that we can eat. We should be eating kale every day. Because our food, good food, should be our medicine. And if we're eating the right things, we're going to make less trips. As I talk to hospital administrators, they say our healthcare system is unsustainable. Hospitals are going to close because there are too many people going to hospitals. There are too many sick people. These are some of our exterior sites. This is in Merton, Wisconsin, about a half hour outside, a 30-acre farm. We don't need these big farms, 1,000-acre farms to do this. We just need a lot of small farms to be able to do this and to be able to cash flow this thing. In Oak Creek, this is actually my farm. Intensive production, growing a lot of different things. Salad mix, very intensive, over $5 a square foot of production. It's all about the soil. If you remember anything I say tonight, it's all about the soil when it comes to the health of our food, the nutrition of our food. You know, those little bugs that are down tickling the micro root fibers to give us the nutrition in the food and the taste of the food, because that's where it's at. If you talk to any of these chefs, they want food that tastes good, grown without chemicals. All of this is grown without chemicals. Very little weed pressure. How would you like to grow in a situation where you don't have to weed? Because if you compost, you kill all the weed seed, pathogens, and you're able to grow in those hoop houses without, we're even growing birds. Tenth and North, I was able to buy this 50,000 square foot building that'll be one of the big roadblock in aquaculture and aquaponics, and this is the housing stock. And you can see this in many cities as a food desert. But this is what the housing, this is an old laundry facility where they used to wash all the tablecloths and aprons and clothes for folks in industry. And that's what it looked like. So the first thing we did when I bought this building, I said, well, that building has to come down. But in taking it down, we're able to collect all the brick, and it pretty much pays for the deconstruction. So there was all 2.5 acres of land outside. So we brought in our crew because we build all of our, we have a construction division, so we started building hoop houses. This was last winter. So we built 8 hoop houses. We planted 30,000 lettuce plants for Cisco that went into the public schools. This can be done. Our national headquarters, using every bit of space, using 7 layers vertical space, just not growing on one plane. We're using every bit of space. Aquaponics in 750-gallon systems to growing in pots, to growing in mushroom chandeliers, to grow shiitake mushrooms over the fish tanks, using every bit of space that we can find, growing bedding plants, growing in these 12-inch pots with salad greens, and sprouts that we turn over every week, 4,000 trays a week. And if we get up to an acre, you're talking about $1 million in production in an annual year. Wheatgrass. These are mushrooms that we sell to restaurants at $16, $17 a pound, these oyster mushrooms and these chandeliers. It takes 3 weeks. Once you stuff those bags with a mycelium mixed with straw, that's what you get. They start popping out of those holes. And shiitake mushrooms, we figured out how to dip those mushrooms into the water, the fish tanks. It enhances the blooming. It cuts down on the time it takes for shiitake mushrooms to fruit. Just things you figure out by trial and error. It takes some time. So one of the key things in doing this work is patience. We also have 2 farms that we leased from the Milwaukee Public Schools. We have over 20 closed schools in Milwaukee, unfortunately. But instead of just letting that land stay, this is a 5-acre facility here that we've put 25. We work with S-Pump, who bring us the wood chip and our compost. This is near the lakefront in the town that I live, in Oak Creek. We started out with 16 houses on the left side. Now we have 35 houses growing food year-round. And our harvesting team of 25 people that harvest the crop. We even start putting in compost before the hoop houses are complete. It's important to be able to grow on new soil, high fertility soil. And we seed very intensively. We don't grow in the existing soil. And this is what you get. When you grow in high fertility soil, this is what you get. And carrots, the okra. And then we find sites. The battalion chief for this fire station area called me and he said the guys were tired of cutting grass behind the fire station. He had this big quarter-acre site. And the guys had too much work shining up the engines and so forth, and they didn't want to cut grass. Who wants to cut grass? Get rid of your lawns, folks. Grow some food. So we built 4 hoop houses behind the fire station, and everybody's happy. The guys at the fire station, they do everything they can to help us there. If you guys need something, you need water, you need food, whatever you guys need, they're happy. 4th and Walnut, a friend of mine had a vacant spot on hard pan clay. We came in, a fire restoration company, ugly lot. People were throwing trash, and now we put a aesthetically pleasing fence, and now we're growing food on that lot in 4th and Walnut. Cemetery, imagine this. How'd you like to grow food at a cemetery? Okay, cemeteries used to have greenhouses, believe it or not. Most of them have torn them down. They used to grow their own plants, and they used to use those. And this is a historic cemetery where all the founders of Milwaukee are buried, and all the mayors and all the wealthy people are buried in tombs and crypts and all that stuff. So they had these greenhouses. The cemetery director called me and he said, "Will you take down these greenhouses? We haven't used them for 10 years. And I went and looked at the greenhouses, and they're over 100 years old, and I said, "We can take them down if you pay us to take them down, but we can't restructure them because they're too old." So now we're growing food. We restored those greenhouses, and now we're growing food in those greenhouses and keeping people out of that upper left-hand quadrant a little while longer if they eat that healthy food. That's what I'm talking about. So this is Forest Home Cemetery greenhouses, glass greenhouses. Jackson, working with Cisco, one of the largest wholesalers in America. We have a corporate agreement with them. And we're growing a lot of different crops on this 34-acre site. We grew 100,000 pounds of carrots in 2011. Last year we had a crop failure because of the severe drought. This year we're on line to do 250,000 pounds of carrots because that's how many carrots Milwaukee Public Schools use in an annual year. So these relationships that lead to partnerships, we can't do it by ourselves because it's really important when we start doing this work to be able to build those relationships into partnerships to make this happen. And people, we can't just kick people away from what I call the Good Food Revolution table. We need corporate people, we need politicos there, we need medical folks there, we need everybody in our community. This wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. But today it's happening. You have to make it happen otherwise because you need all the strengths. You have to leverage all the strengths from all of these folks to be able to do this because this is about passion, this work. It's not necessarily about a whole lot of dollars. We're not going to get there if we always sit around waiting for the dollars to come through. So we process everything. We have a 50,000 square foot building now that we have coolers and freezers. This is a signature salad mix, the preferred salad mix in Milwaukee, about 12 different items in this winter salad mix that go out to the market. And these are some of the crops. I'll go through these pretty fast. We're getting there, folks. Told you it was over 1,000. Renewable energy. We can't do it without renewable energy. Okay, if this carbon tax thing passes, this will help us. Because we're not going to be able to sustain this without. So we built, I have a partner, we built this anaerobic digester. This anaerobic digester produces acetic acid at 22,000 per milligram. It had never been done before on a continuous flow basis. So what we do is we grind food in on the exterior, we suck it into the tank, has a big auger inside, the tank is heated to over 100 degrees, and after 30 days we got the acetic acid levels, and what we were trying to prove, working with University of Wisconsin Green Bay microbiology department, that you could put new food waste in, take off 1,000 gallons of acetic acid a day without the acid levels dropping as you put new, and that happened. So now we have this this system that we're going to build a large-scale system when we get the funding. So the slurry before it goes in looks kind of like tomato soup or pea soup. Solar energy, we built a pergola. So a quarter of our electricity is generated by our solar panels. That's an external system that goes into the grid. And then we get an offset bill. We have 2 meters, and 1 meter measures how much we are generating. At the end of the month when we get our bill, they'll show the difference between what we produced and what we used. Solar hot water system, working with Caleffi, a European company that's anchored in Milwaukee that provided panels for homes. They had never done a commercial project. So now we have these 24 panels, internal system that produces 70% of our heated water. And again, these piles of compost in the corners of the hoop houses giving off 150 degree of temperature in the wintertime keeps those greenhouses along with the compost that also generates and the wood chip that generates heat to be able to grow this. When it's 25 degrees or lower, we cover those beds with plastic. Water catchment, we're capturing 30,000 gallons of water off of all the greenhouses and hoop houses to reuse, to water the plants, and also to grow fish, because on the exterior we're growing fish, not only inside the greenhouses, but in those water catchment systems. And animals. This was our first goat. Last week, goats start breeding about this time their babies start happening about this time of year. Last week we had 7. Every day we're getting 3 or 4, and we had 3 sets of triplets. So we have about 50 goats. We have a new creamery in downtown Milwaukee. They're like too smart for their own good. You know. And we also have 500 layers. And we do bees, and we teach people how to do bees. We have 20 hives that produce over 100 pounds of honey per hive. And then we market this under an urban honey label. And some of the projects that I really enjoy, I work with folks that have disabilities, like this lady from the Badger Association from the Blind. I was able to teach her how to plant, totally blind, how to plant and harvest sprouts in 30 minutes. She had a high sensitivity to touch. So even though she has a disability, she's not handicapped. And that's, we work with a lot of folks with disabilities, but they're not handicapped. From kids that come from schools with autism, all different types of autism, to kids that have all kinds of mental issues that people have given up on them. But working in a system where they're using their hands and in a hands-on kind of way. Catholic Charities, seniors, immigrant seniors wanted a garden. They had lost their farms in their countries, and they came through some of the immigrant resettlement programs, and they were seniors and they didn't want to play cards. So I was called by Catholic Charities, and I saw this spot. So we brought in wood chip and compost. And now these seniors have a garden. Kohl's Corporation, probably one of the most successful corporations, they wanted their employees to be healthier. So we have multiple gardens on their corporate campus. We brought in compost. Again, you can't do this without being able to grow soil. They have their own in-house daycare center for their employees. These young preschoolers get to go out and pick cherry tomatoes and fruit. The mayor, Mayor Barrett, called me. He wanted a garden like the White House. So now, for the last 5-6 years, we've been growing a garden at City Hall. Thousands of people go by that garden, so they get introduced into the possibilities of urban agriculture. We have to be able to show examples of what urban agriculture can look like, aesthetically pleasing, and you're about to see a really aesthetically pleasing garden that we operate. Rockwell Automation, another international company in a food desert on the south side of Milwaukee, the highest lead area, in the top 10 in the nation. No food in that community. They wanted a farm stand, so we put a farm stand. Discovery World on the lakefront, they wanted a garden. We also have an aquaponics system where thousands of people go into there and they can see what aquaponics is all about. It's much more upscale than our system that we have. Washington Park, working with the mayor and the aldermen in that area, we brought in compost with Lowe's Corporation, provided the little boxes. 40 people in one day got a garden with plants. King Drive, we started on the exterior of the biggest food desert in Milwaukee, and now we have, I think, the first one in the nation like this. An organic deli and food store. We built this out. It took us 2 years to build this out. But now it's open for the last 6 months. And we keep supplies on hand to be able to quickly go and do this work. This is another project that we did that just ended, building of a green garage by students from Bradley Tech High School, a vocational training high school for trades young people. Totally off the grid. can grow enough food for the family. You can access this from inside or outside, totally off the grid. Badger School in Madison. When you think of Madison, Wisconsin, you think it's an upscale community, but on the south side, it's a food desert. So the first thing we did is built some gardens on the outside while the old school was torn down. We opened a new school this past year. It's an agricultural school, curriculum school that we helped build the curriculum with the teachers at the school that covers all the STEM requirements. It's a neighborhood school with greenhouses inside and gardens, and this is the kind of thing that we need to make happen. Boys and Girls Club, they wanted a garden. They're in a park. So we brought in compost, and now these young people have a garden. Maple Tree School, another Milwaukee public school site, 5-acre old ball field. Unfortunately, they build playgrounds on asphalt. So this was available. And this community is 6 miles from the closest retail grocery store. A lot of gangs in this community. No food. So we brought in compost. Had our big celebration with the mayor and all of those folks that wanted to see it, and now we're growing food for this community. And we have a youth program to try to keep some of these younger youths from joining gangs, because that is what we should be doing. And we also have an academic program of 2 hours every day with our youth corps. And we've been able to place some of these kids that would have never gone to college in universities around the country. So if Miami wants to give me a couple scholarships, we'll send some of my kids here. I'm just saying, you know, I'll accept them. Okay. The Blackfeet Nation in Browning, Montana, we went out there. Spent 2 years working with the youth there, because the elders, they're not farmers, they're gatherers in that tribe, and they're worried about extinction because they lose 3 people a week in a town of 8,000. Strategic planning in the South. Young People's Project in Jackson, a math literacy program that realized they need food because Mississippi is over 50% obesity rate. The only state now that's worse than them is West Virginia. Community Action Organization, using stimulus dollars, they put up 50 hoop houses to grow food, and then, again, an industrial city. This is downtown Chicago, our first project. I like this image because it shows we're downtown Chicago, corn growing in downtown, imagine that. The most aesthetically pleasing garden, I hauled down 100,000 pounds of compost in Grant Park. If you go to Grant Park in the summer, you'll see this garden. It's called Art on the Farm, a French potager design of different colors, 150 different crops growing in this garden. It's been on a lot of magazine covers. Using our signature growing style of 36-inch wide beds, 18-inch pathways between. Cabrini Green, the most famous or infamous housing project in America. A lot of murders have happened. As they take down the high rises and the low rises, the Fourth Presbyterian Church, a church of 4,000 people in downtown Chicago, bought this site, engaged us. We've been operating this for 7 years. Again, we brought in about 100,000 pounds of compost on top of asphalt, a very aesthetically pleasing garden, where a lot of fence mending is happening as gentrification is coming from the east. Iron Street, this is our new headquarters, an old truck terminal. On one side of the river to the right there, average income $55,000 a year, where the mayor grew up, Mayor Daley grew up. On the left side, 700,000 people, average income $19,000, where we're anchored. Badly need food. So this is our new site in Chicago. Jackson Park on the south side of Chicago, working with Nature's Path out of Vancouver that put in 39 gardens in North America. They funded that project. Gallery 37, that's where you saw the corn. Unfortunately, now it's a high rise. Lozano School on the north side of Chicago, we brought in compost. These kids built a garden. Ames School on top of asphalt. Backyard program with seniors. We're in the Chicago Flower and Garden Show in 2010 through 2013. We just finished our 4th show in a row, the famous Flower and Garden Show. This is our display to show that gardens can be both intensively planted and aesthetically pleasing. We don't need to grow gardens that are ugly gardens. We need to enhance the communities as we build these gardens in communities. One of my rules. CSA program started in 1995. We do it year-round. It's important for us to eat this healthy food, not just 25 weeks out of the year, but 52 weeks out of the year. So we have to do it. Kenya, one of the projects that we're working on, this is a rudimentary fence. This is a landfill in Kenya. They have soil fertility problems there too. Wonderful programs, wonderful people working very hard. Ukraine, another project that I worked on after the Russians are out of there now. This was once considered the breadbasket of Europe. Now gardens are popping up. In central London, you'll find behind gates these gardens, education facilities for kids, animals in central London. And it's important because this issue is not just in America, it's all over the world. In our regional training centers, when I leave here, I'll be going to Fort Valley State, Georgia, a land grant where it's one of our regional training centers. We have a student there that came through our youth corps that's on full scholarship there in the ag program. And now that student is the president of the student ag program at Fort Valley State. Mississippi, Mound Bayou, the oldest black township in America, started by 2 slaves after the Civil War. The town is devastated. Agriculture has changed from 15 years ago. The average farm in Mississippi was 800 to 1,000 acres. Now it's 8,000 to 20,000 acres is the average size of a farm. All the small farming went away for a while, but these folks are coming back on family land. 7 Harvests in Arkansas, same thing, 7-acre farm and Forest City, Arkansas, breaking new grounds, and Louisville, growing food in Louisville. Lynchburg Grows, an old rose greenhouse where the roses went on the Kentucky Derby winners' back. Now they're growing food in a 7-acre facility and growing soil. And they reached a point now they're selling soil and growing the minds of these young people into the Women's Environmental Institute in Minnesota. 80-acre farm outside of Minnesota run by women. And by the way, there are more women farmers in the world than men farmers in the world, another fact. D-Town in Detroit, this group is growing food in a park, taking it upon themselves to bring food into the communities of Detroit, building hoop houses to be able to grow out, learning how to farm. And yes, they do have their struggles as they move along the continuum. In Columbus, Ohio, and a young lady's backyard who had a big backyard, they're another regional training center, growing soil. Cleveland at the Forgotten Triangle that was devastated. All the houses burned down at one point. 25-acre agricultural site now. And we work with this group, Riddall. They're growing food and growing fish and aquaponics for their community. Blair Grocery, this young man in the red came from New York after Katrina. And now he's farming in the 9th Ward, where houses were devastated, using the techniques that he learned at our training center, Brooklyn, New York, and Brooklyn Rescue Mission. Imagine food being grown in Bed-Stuy. This is in Bed-Stuy. 2 reverends are growing food. They have a pantry, but they wanted healthy food to go into their pantry. So now they're gleaning food from farmers that come into New York, but they're also growing a portion of that food on 2 vacant lots that they were able to purchase next door. University District of Columbia. This is project that we worked on. We went in and excavated a site to be able to grow soil for the many projects that are cropping up in Washington, D.C. There's no place to compost in Washington, D.C., so the university in Beltsville, Maryland has a 140-acre farm. So now they're going to be growing soil for those projects in D.C. And the future. This is our signature project, a 5-story vertical farm, the first of its kind in the world. We're in a capital campaign. We've gotten all the zoning done. Imagine an aesthetically pleasing building next to on our national headquarters to grow food, and it will house a agricultural nutritional institute run by Growing Power in the universities in the state of Wisconsin. We're going to start out with master's and doctoral students that are studying the food system. And one of the things that we do is, in Growing Power, that's embedded into everything that we do, is about social justice, food justice, environmental justice, dismantling racism in the food system. We have an organization called Growing Food and Justice. We have an annual gathering. This year will be in Taos, New Mexico in October. If anybody's interested, look at our website. Thank you very much. Sure.
Thank you very much to Mr. Allen for that really thought-provoking and inspiring talk. He's certainly shown us how we can create an integrated food system that is local, sustainable, organic, just, diverse, and comprehensive. We are pleased to be able to take questions from the audience. So you'll notice a stationary mic in the center of the room. If you would like to ask a question, please form a queue behind the mic. When you ask your question, please identify yourself so he knows who is asking the question. I'd also like to let you know that Books and Books is here selling his book at the back of the room. For those of you in attendance this evening, there's a 10% discount on the book. So I encourage you to purchase one of those on your way out. And we'll now turn it over to questions.
Hi, I'm Toby Davidow. I'm a master gardener here in Miami. This is so inspiring, really. You did not mention seeds. Are you keeping some of your crops to keep your own seed, or are you buying seed?
Well, we buy the majority of the seed. We do some seed saving. If you're going to do seed saving, you need to kind of break it off as a separate business, because it's a highly technical thing to be able to seed save and not have seeds when you're growing them. They're segregated so you don't get any cross-pollination. That's all kinds of issues. And shortness of the season. Most of the seed that's saved in this country is done in warm weather climates, like in California. Most of the seed is actually grown in California for major seed companies. We buy most of our seed from Johnny's out of Maine. They have the most, probably the most seed you can buy, the different varieties of greens, and they have organic certified seed that you can buy from them. But there are a lot of places like Seed Savers and Fedco and a lot of companies that specialize, and we can't do everything. And one of the things I try to do is support those systems. You know, if we're doing everything, it just is not a sustainable position to be in. So we try to support those folks that are growing seed, and I encourage folks that are doing backyard garden, master gardeners or whatever, save what you can. You know, it's difficult to save everything.
Thank you.
Share your seed with others, because it doesn't take, you know, a plant will produce a lot of seed. Yes.
Hi, I'm Stephen Shellbach. I'm an entrepreneurship student. My question is, you discussed soil management as one of the largest labor requirements for producing food. I'm curious as to what you feel are the major limitations on soil-less food production, and whether or not it would be the most viable solution for urban farming.
Well, I believe even if you're going to do hydroponics, you know, the way most people do hydroponics, it's soilless. so you're getting a lot of nitrogen and the crop looks really good. Like a lettuce plant will look really good, but if you get the leaf samples tested, it's missing a lot of the micronutrients that our body needs. So if you're going to do hydroponics, I like to do it in soil. In other words, you put the pots in soil, whether it's a 4-inch pot or a 12-inch pot, you know, those holes at the bottoms of the pots, they can wick up the nitrogen that the fish give off, or the nitrogen system that you have in hydroponics, but you get all those micronutrients. So I've tasted hydroponic food and it doesn't taste the same as food that's grown in soil. But you can do it hydroponically, just do it in soil, not in just wool, rock wool, or whatever in water.
What about expanded clay pellets or coir as a media?
Coir we use. We don't use any perlite or vermiculite. I started using coir years ago. Many rose growers were using it a few decades ago. But now it's very popular to mix, we mix our worm castings, 1 part worm castings, 1 part coir, because coir has no nutrient value, but what it does have, it holds water. So it reduces the amount of water that you have to use in your bedding plants or in your sprouts. So we use that in all of our sprouting and so forth. You know. Very expensive though, you know, compared to say peat moss, but peat moss is not a sustainable product. You're digging the bogs out, you're injuring the environment by using that. So we don't use peat moss at all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I learned a lot. I feel like an overprogrammed computer. My name is Gwen Carter, and I write health books as Food as Medicine. I also develop health and beauty formulas out of environmental resources, especially dirt, soil, and clay. One thing that I noticed, or maybe I missed, you're not using cow manure and your goat manure to grow. I'm very impressed with that if you're not, because as a veg, I really don't want my food grown with animal manure, and I am very, very pleased with the way you are getting the compost from the wholesale grocers to turn over. And do you sell any of your soil? Because I teach people to take in clay and soil to heal stomach wounds and stomach ulcers.
Well, I'll try to give you a little piece of education about inputs into compost. Now, if I'm living in a rural community, the only nitrogen that you can get is animal waste. So you would not be able to generate any compost without animal waste. There's nothing wrong. Nitrogen is nitrogen is nitrogen. What a lot of people are afraid of is E. coli. There's a lot of E. coli in animal waste, probably a higher percentage than in food waste, but you also have E. coli in food waste. So if you're going to use animal waste, what we do is in our sites, we inject worms into our sites. We put it in the compost, and after a while, if you continue to use that site, when you, at the end of the processing, the process of growing soil, you're going to have worms in your compost. And the worms are the only organism that can kill E. coli. What happens when the worm takes in E. coli, it crushes it in its belly, and the casting, their waste comes out, it doesn't have E. coli anymore, and a lot of other bad guys in the soil. Worms are our, as Aristotle said, what is that saying? Aristotle said, the something of the earth, what? Yeah.
Salt of the earth, or the gold?
Well, anyway,
called it the black gold?
He said something about that.
Okay.
You know, they clean up the soil.
Okay.
Worms. Without worms, we're in trouble.
Are you selling any of the soil that people
Absolutely.
Could use? Okay.
3/4 of the soil that we use internally ourselves to build out our infrastructure. We sell about 1/4 of our worm castings and our compost.
Excellent.
And we sell our compost. The average price for compost in this country is about $10 a yard. We sell our compost for $85 a yard. And do you know why we sell it at $85 a yard? Because all compost is equal. Most of the compost that's grown in this country will not grow a plant because it's carbon-based. You need equal parts of nitrogen carbon to make compost.
Okay. Lastly, I dive for spirulina, and I do a lot of formulating with it. I'm wondering, have you ever considered using spirulina to feed the fish? And thank you.
Well, fish, our tilapia grow faster on filamentous algae than anything. So we do use filamentous algae to feed, and one of the programs we're going to start is growing algae for tilapia. They grow faster on that than anything because they are basically, tilapia will eat anything, but they're basically vegetarian. Okay? Yes?
Good to see you again, Will. Thanks for coming back to Miami.
Good to be here.
My name is Sam Van Leer. I'm the founder and president of Urban Paradise Guild, and we have 2 sites, 3 acres in Little Haiti, 2.5 acres in Hialeah, also serving Opelika. And we're at the point now where we're ready to get an influx of funding. And what advice would you have? We're just getting our stuff started.
My advice, again, is engage the community. That you don't want to just come into a community and plop down a garden. You need to get folks in that community on board. And one of the mistakes that I see a lot of folks do when they go in and they start community gardens and they start organization, the organization starts growing, they don't bring the folks in the community into their management level positions. And that's not sustainable to do that. Eventually, the thing's going to implode. You really need to make sure that you're engaging the community in all aspects of engagement, which includes hiring people into your organization if you're going to work in those communities. So I've seen it happen. I've seen so many projects end badly because they didn't follow the golden rule of engaging the community.
That's understood. My main concern is the ability to hire.
The ability to hire.
The funding.
What's that?
Funding.
Well, the good thing about growing food is that you can generate your own income. So you have to reach a certain level that you're able to generate enough funding. It's important when you first get started, if you can do that, is to get some grant funding. If you're a 501c3, if you're a for-profit business, you're going to have to go to a bank or whatever, or go into your own pockets. A lot of times, funders are not going to take a risk. It's a very competitive world when you go after grants. When you write your proposal, remember, if you're going up against an organization like ours that's been around, and the people that are sitting on that table judging the proposal, if it doesn't look quite good, and if it's some stuff that they say, these folks have only been doing this for 6 months, and they're asking for $200,000, you're probably not going to get it. So my advice is to start small. You don't want to go for the max. If it says the max you can ask for is $200,000, you're going to have to go for maybe $20,000 or $10,000. And then the next year, you go for more.
Yeah, we've got the funding for the wells, we've got funding for shade houses, for full sun nurseries. We're building up to the rest.
The other thing that you can do is develop partnerships and share your resources. And that's hard to do because, partnerships are hard to make happen. But that's what you should try to do. Today, it's much easier than when I started. Nobody would give us money. We had to just use sweat equity and whatever money I could dig out of my pocket to keep our organization going. But the key ingredient to all of these projects is passion. This is the hardest thing you can possibly do. This is much harder than becoming a successful, say, organic farmer is harder than becoming a professional athlete. And look at only a small percentage of us ever become professional athletes. So there's not a lot of farmers out there today.
Yeah, we have to grow them.
Yeah, we got to grow farmers, exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jovan. Currently work with Ready to Grow Gardens. It's edible landscaping company. We're a couple years old now. worked with some of the people in the room here. And I was just wondering if you give a two-part question, if you could give more specifics on partnerships and specifically like the vacant lots. You know, there's plenty of them in the downtown area, especially in the poorer neighborhoods like Overtown. And I'm very interested in helping out those communities. And also if you could give more specifics on your soil building methods, you know, exactly how you separate things, why, how you layer the worm castings, for instance.
Okay. See these young people, they're on it, man. Okay, first question is how you build partnerships and how you, you know, partnerships are really hard to build. It takes time to build partnerships. So I can pass on this to you because I went through this process of trying to go to every meeting that folks wanted to have, and I'd go to those meetings and sit there, and you know, I had a lot of experience in growing stuff, and you know, you give people, they ask you questions and so forth, and they want to do a project, and you know, after 6 months, you know, go back to the meeting, it's the same stuff. After 8 months, it's the same stuff. After a year, it's the same stuff, just sitting and talking. Nothing's happening with those folks. So I leave, go away. A couple years later, I come back. They're still sitting there and talking. So you have to decide how you choose your partners in terms of how you want to move along the continuum. You can go to those meetings and never get anything done on the ground because you're trying to build a farm or whatever. So you have to choose your partners carefully. You try to find the people that really want to do stuff, because some people that come to those meetings, they get paid. We don't get paid to come to those meetings. So you have to understand that. There's some people who love those meetings. They love to sit and have coffee and donuts, you know, and they're getting paid to do that, to go to meetings. You're not getting paid. You're trying to build a farm. So you have to figure out how you're going to use your time. I'm not saying don't go to those meetings, because you need to go and check out what's going on. Somebody can maybe pass on some information, but choose your partners carefully. And usually in a room like that, you're going to find people that are trying to do the same thing you're doing, and those are the people that you should probably rock with, you know. The other piece of the question is, how do you get your inputs? Is that pretty much?
Basically, just if you go a little bit more into specifics of, how you get your inputs.
Okay, same thing. Getting inputs is the same thing as selling, say, carrots to somebody. You have to go to the places that have the waste. Because remember, don't try to create a new system. Waste management's got the system. If you open up a business, they're going to be there trying to sell you a dumpster. What size dumpster do you want? You want a 5-yarder, a 10-yarder, a 15-yarder, a 20-yarder, a 30-yarder? Okay? They come in with the equipment for you to put your garbage in. You know, and then they charge you what is called a tipping fee. So they're going to charge you maybe $150 a month for a 5-yard dumpster, up to maybe $300 a month for a 12-yard dumpster. So you have to do the same thing. Only there's one difference that I use is I did not charge the company for the pickup. And then I trained the company how to separate their waste. And I provided the container that worked for their business. So you have to sell your program just like they sell their program to be able to collect this waste. You can't go dumpster diving for waste. Okay? Don't even think about it. You have to have a day. You got to operate just like the big green truck. They have a day that they pick up. Sometimes they pick up multiple times a week. You have to do the same thing. Whatever that business, if you decide to do this, is one of the toughest things to do is to collect nitrogen waste. Carbon waste is much easier because a lot of times you can get companies to deliver wood chip to your site. But when it comes to the nitrogen waste that you need to make good compost, you have to sell yourself. You have to treat it as a business. You know, you can't do it spirit. You know, whenever you say, oh, this week I want to go out and get some waste, it doesn't work that way. You'll never make compost if you have that attitude. You got to set it up like a business, sell yourself, and be on time. If you tell them you're going to pick up on a Monday I'll be here between, say, 12 and 3. That's your pickup window. If you don't show up that day, you've lost that waste. They'll go back to the big green truck. Okay? I hope that helps you.
Just a little bit. Hi, my name is Kate. I'm an engineering student here. I wanted to know, well, first of all, I saw a video on YouTube about your work about a year ago, and I was amazed, and I'm thrilled that you're here. You can't imagine how excited I was. Firstly, I want to ask, is there anything that sticks out in your mind as a mistake that you made in one of your farms, and it's something that something that you learned a lot from, and why you tried it in the first place?
Yeah, we would probably have to be sitting here for the next 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah, I always say, I tell my staff this, that, you guys can kind of rock the boat, make mistakes, but don't sink the ship. Don't make any really critical things that are going to impact our ability to stay in business, but you're going to make mistakes. The only way to learn how to farm, you can't learn how to farm in a classroom. If anybody tells you that, they're not telling you the truth. You got to learn how to farm in a hands-on way, and it takes a long time. I have this 80-year-old farm friend that I'll be calling in the next couple weeks. His name is Ed, and he's 80 years old. And I call him every spring, and I say, Ed, how are you doing? And he says, oh, I made it through the winter. I made it through another winter. And I say, well, what's happening on the farm this year, Ed? He said, well, I'm going to grow this and that and the other, and I had problems with this and that and the other. And he says, Will, I'm just beginning to learn how to farm. And this guy's been farming for 70 years. So that's what it's like. You never learn everything. If you get cocky and think you got it, forget it. All it takes is a small bug. All it takes is hail, a bad storm, whatever, and you're wiped out. So farming will keep you from getting a big hit. It'll keep you very grounded,
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening. Please join me again in thanking Mr. Allen for a wonderful presentation. And please, we encourage you to join us for other events that the Office of Civic and Community Engagement will be hosting this semester. Again, thank you for coming, and go Canes.